So we talked a week or so ago about loving kindness, which is one of the four Brahma Viharas, the other three being equanimity, sympathetic joy, and compassion. And I wanted to hone in on equanimity this morning. We talk about it in the context of other topics, but I wanted to spend the morning specifically talking about equanimity and really as a foundational practice that the Buddha taught. And in all the Buddhist teachings, equanimity really stands out as a beacon of balance. You know, a state of mind that transcends the waves of the eight worldly winds, and I'm going to describe those. The eight worldly winds, the Buddha taught those in the Lakavapada Sutta, and they are pleasure and pain, gain and loss, success and failure, and praise and blame. Again, the eight worldly winds. There are four um, pleasurable ones and four painful ones. Pain and pleasure, gain and loss, success and failure, praise and blame. And they describe, the eight worldly winds describe the attachments to the positive ones and the aversions to the unpleasant ones that yoke us to what is known as samsara, which is the cycle of suffering that the Buddha taught. Samsara, Samsara is the Pali word. So there are four hopes in the worldly winds, corresponding with four fears. Each of them is sort of the 180 degrees from its partner. Um, and but if we center our lives on the eight worldly winds, it really leads us away from true happiness. Happiness is not simply the abundance of pleasure and the absence of pain, which we often talk about. It's not just a life filled with pleasure and absence of pain. You know, rather it is more, and I really prefer the term contentment, but we'll call it happiness. Rather, it's to remain confident and optimistic in the face of everyday reality, the sort of ups and downs, which is why equanimity is such an important practice. You will recall that the Pali word for equanimity is upekka, Upekka, and it's really defined as the ability to maintain mental calmness and composure, mental calmness and composure in the face of life's inevitable ups and downs. So if you think of a serene lake undisturbed by the ripples on the surface from external forces like wind or whatever, that's the mind of equanimity, the underlying undisturbed part of the lake. And and to truly understand equanimity, I think to really get into it, we have to recognize that it has its roots in wisdom, which we talk about. In other words, the wisdom to discern the impermanent and ever-changing nature of existence, because it's that impermanence and that ever-changing nature which causes so many of the ups and downs of our lives. You know, if we understand that life, like a river, flows with these currents of what the Taoists call the 10,000 joys and the 10,000 sorrows of life. So when we cultivate equanimity, when we practice it, when we set an intention for equanimity, we're learning not to grasp onto fleeting pleasures, nor to recoil from transient pains. So we're not in reactive mode, and I'll come back to reactivity in a moment. But we learn we learn not to grasp onto fleeting pleasures and cling to them, or recoil and avoid transient pains. And this wisdom that comes that we talk about that brings about equanimity, it's not passive resignation. It's not giving up. It's not saying, oh, why bother? It's rather the active acknowledgement of the nature of things as they truly are, not as we wish them to be. Again, it's a theme we constantly revisit here. It's the active acknowledgement that the nature of things as they truly are, not as we wish them to be. Equanimity is not indifference. Indifference is its near enemy. It's the thing that looks like it or may appear like it, but isn't the same. It does not imply apathy. It does not imply a lack of caring. On the contrary, equanimity arises from a deep sense of compassion and understanding, the recognition and the compassion that all things are subject to the universal law of impermanence. And that's a shared vulnerability that every creature on the planet has. There's a profound interconnectedness in recognizing this shared vulnerability to the law of impermanence. So in our daily lives, what equanimity brings is a balanced response to situations. We remain steady and grounded when we're hit with the slings and arrows of life, and those slings and arrows are inevitable. Nobody escapes them. So when we're confronted with success or failure, gain or loss, any of the 8 worldly winds, a mind that's grounded in equanimity remains steady. Okay, and another way, and I alluded to this a few minutes ago, that I think about equanimity is non-reactivity. We're not just reacting. We're not clinging to the elations of success or succumbing to the despair of failure. We're remaining steady. We're non-reactive to either the elation of pleasure and success or the despair of failure. And I'm not saying we don't experience success and failure. Of course we do. I'm saying we don't either cling to the successes or push away the failures. That is equanimity. It's a balanced approach which allows us to navigate life's challenges with a clear and undisturbed mind, with a steadiness of focus. And equanimity is not just reserved for those moments of personal loss or gain. It also extends to our relationships with others. So in the face of praise or blame, the equanimous mind does not inflate with arrogance when lauded by others, or crumble with self-doubt when criticized by others. It just recognizes the transient nature of these opinions, ours or others, and acknowledges the inherent dignity of every being. Okay. So to cultivate equanimity, we begin with our sitting practice. And while we're sitting in meditation, we observe the fluctuations of our thoughts and emotions without attachment. We develop a steady awareness. That's where we learn to just watch things arise and pass away without reacting, without getting pulled in, without getting hooked on the good stuff and pushing away the not so good stuff. And then we bring that into the world by observing the fluctuations of our thoughts and emotions without attachment. We develop a steady awareness. And this awareness becomes this fortress of tranquility that's often described as in the midst of life's storms. So when we walk this path of the Dharma, we embrace these teachings on equanimity. They are foundational, as I said at the beginning, that our mind becomes like the unwavering mountain, rooted in wisdom and compassion and a deep understanding of the impermanence of all things. In cultivating equanimity, we find not only serenity for ourselves, but also a compassionate outlook to the rest of the world. And what we say about equanimity is, may all beings be free from suffering and abide in equanimity. So that's my take on equanimity this morning. It's a very important practice.